Hey everyone, my name is Ben Heisch and I am a wedding and elopement photographer. Today I'm going to talk to you about this rumored Canon EOS R5 and why I think it might be the best camera that has ever been made for wedding photography. So for just a quick backstory, I have been a wedding photographer since 2007, have photographed just hundreds and hundreds of weddings, starting off with the Canon 20D and the Rebel XTI is what I used for my first ever wedding. Quickly moved on to the Canon 5D, the original, the 5D Mark II. Then the 5D Mark III was the last Canon camera that I used and was actually really excited about when they first announced it. But for the past few years, I've been photographing all of my professional work and a lot of my personal work for that matter on Leica cameras, mainly because I was getting really inconsistent results in my autofocus with the Canon 5D series in general. The 5D, the 5D Mark II, the 5D Mark III, all were just having issues with me. I actually broke the switch off of one of my lenses from kicking it to manual focus mode so often, switched to back button focus, used everything that I could, and it was just having a really big issue with inconsistency on those things. So I switched to Leica a few years ago, but there were a few things that I felt like were still lacking. And one of the main ones for these Leica cameras, the Leica M240, which I'll put out a video soon on that camera specifically, but the low light performance in the M240 specifically just wasn't and still isn't very good, especially in comparison to almost every other modern mirrorless camera. So actually in the middle of last wedding season, I ended up picking up the EOS R, and I mainly used it to just adapt my existing Leica lenses and a few of the Canon lenses that I still had. And I was actually really surprised at how much I liked this camera. It honestly feels amazing, it has a really good kind of form factor and stuff. It's not small by any means, but in comparison to a Leica camera, it's actually pretty close. So the form factor and everything felt a lot better than a DSLR. Now, what every wedding photographer in the world was super frustrated about was the fact that they crippled this camera with a few things, but mainly that they only put in one card slot. So for someone like me who's pretty obsessed with sort of data security and my backup workflow, I actually made a video about it last year and I will link it above and below if you're interested in checking it out. That was definitely not necessarily a deal breaker, but something that was pretty disappointing in this original EOS R camera. But wedding photographers around the world rejoice. The new EOS R5 will have dual card slots. We're not sure what they're going to be exactly, but even if they're just dual SD card slots, that is more than fine for me. That alone would actually make this camera worth it for a lot of people. I know wedding photographers would pay $1,000 extra if this same camera, if nothing else changed and they just added dual card slots. Canon photographers would be jumping on these things en masse. But there are a few other things about the R5 specifically that I'm pretty excited about. The first of which is that the R5 is actually going to be Canon's first camera ever to have in-body image stabilization. So Canon lenses that have image stabilization in them already are amazing, but the problem is that most wedding photographers like myself mainly shoot on prime lenses, and the amount of lenses that actually have image stabilization that are primes is incredibly low. In their little press announcement thing here, Canon actually says that the EOS R will be the first Canon camera equipped with IBIS, and when used in conjunction with the extremely effective in-lens stabilization, or IS, will allow photographers to handhold the camera in light levels not previously imagined. Now, as sort of a reminder, if you are photographing anything that has moving or possibly will be moving, basically any human activity, if you shoot things at like a quarter of a second or something like that, you're gonna probably run into movement with the actual frames in the subject, whether or not the rest of your image is in focus. But all that to say, having that extra image stabilization, even at 1/125th of a second or something like that, that's gonna help kind of minimize your camera shake is gonna be super helpful. The next thing that's pretty exciting about just this whole EOS R and RF system is the lenses that Canon's been putting out. Canon definitely jumped really heavily into their lens setup, which as a photographer, I really appreciate. It's just some of the lenses that they've come out with, like the 28 to 70 f2. And even their 24 to 70 2.8 has image stabilization. The new 70 to 200 is tiny. Canon just clearly decided that they were going to go all in on their lenses, which is amazing. But I think the coolest thing about this whole EOS R system, if you are someone who already shoots with Canon, is that with a simple little adapter here, your lenses actually all get a huge upgrade. So every Canon EF lens for the past almost 20, 25 years now is available to be used on the EOS R system, the RF system, the R5, the R6 possibly, the RP. And from what I've seen and used, every lens actually focuses and is way, way, way better on this new mirrorless system than it is on a DSLR. So Canon's dual pixel autofocus and their eye tracking specifically that works within these mirrorless cameras, if you toss any lens, literally any EF lens, including the cheap budget 50mm 1.8 onto the EOS R system with this adapter, it works flawlessly. I think the other thing that's amazing about this EOS R system is that all these other lenses that were previously not available because of the size of a DSLR are now able to be used on this system. So you're gonna get some Canon colors and stuff like that with a whole unique array of lenses and systems because you're able to use adapters like this to shoot things like Leica lenses or Zeiss lenses or stuff from other mounts onto this system. In keeping with that whole theme too, the R, and it's rumored that the R5 is going to come with a new battery, but it's going to be in the same size and form factor of the original ones that have been working with the 5Ds for years. Now, as someone who at times has built up, a big kit within a certain ecosystem, having a continuation of the gear and things you already use is super, super helpful. As a wedding photographer, I always have to have lots of extra batteries and stuff. So if I'm able to get a new battery with the new camera, but also use my existing batteries, that's just another reason why it would be easy for someone like me to switch. Now, a couple of things that I don't really necessarily care about that much, but is actually pretty cool. The camera's gonna shoot 8K video, and it'll also have 4K 120. Now, we don't know if that's gonna be full frame, if it's gonna be in some weird codec, if it's gonna be motion JPEG. And I actually don't do video, so this is the only thing I really do video for. But that's really cool. I think what's also kind of fun, but not necessarily needed for me, is going to be that 45 megapixel rumored sensor. It's not going to be overkill, so it's not going to be like 50 plus. As a wedding photographer, I take thousands and thousands of photos a year. I actually don't need them to be that incredibly high resolution, but the idea is that you have that is going to be pretty cool. Now, my only hesitation really for the EOS R5 as the perfect wedding photographer's camera might actually just be this rumored R6 that might be coming out as well. It's sort of said to be the kind of middle ground between the current EOS R and the R5. And so if this R6 maybe has less frames per second, doesn't have 8K video, but if it just has dual card slots and basically everything else that this camera already has and is at a much lower price point, I think that a lot of wedding photographers are going to jump all over that. So let me know what you think about all this. It is the first camera, this R5, that I have actually been really, really excited about from Canon since the 5D Mark III came out 8 years ago. There's just a lot of really cool technology that I'm pretty pumped about, and I'm really, really excited for the direction that Canon's going. Sort of the added bonus to this as well is that Canon is sort of, in my opinion, putting Sony and Fuji and Nikon kind of on notice that like, hey, we're back. We are going to be making an amazing camera that a lot of people are going to jump on. And hopefully that's just going to continue to push the industry forward to make better cameras with better specs for cheaper prices, which always is going to benefit all of us. So thanks so much for watching. And do you think that this camera actually could possibly be the best camera for wedding photography? I honestly think it has a really, really good shot of doing that. And we'll just kind of have to see how all that stuff shakes out and what the other camera companies do. So thanks again. See you in the next one. Peace.